The Techter is a jack-of-all-trades melee support caster. Ideally, its role is to keep its enhanced group buffs going, remove debuffs from allies, and CC enemies, all while doing damage when they can through techniques and hard-hitting melee swings. The two weapons it uses are the Wand and the Talus. However, due to how much support the Wand gets in the skill tree over the Talus, it is usually the preferred weapon. This doesn't mean the Talus has no uses though, as it can still be used for hitting certain spots that would normally be inaccessible, or even buffing and healing from a distance. The main perk of the Wand would be its focus, and this fills when landing charged attacks on enemies. Once you have enough focus, your normal Wand attacks gain an additional effect, which comes in the form of a small explosion, known as Photonic Fury. The interesting part about this is that for every enemy you hit, you create another explosion. That being said, one smacking with normals after grouping enemies up with Zondil is usually your go-to combo when mobbing, since the AoE explosions will overlap. While still on the topic of wands, Techter so far only has one weapon skill and it's for the wand. However, it is not currently in the North American version of the game just yet. Therefore, we don't know if its name, Heavy Hammer, will change or not. But so long as you know how it works, that's all that matters. When using it uncharged, it acts as a pretty nice gap closer. At its first state of charge, it performs a shorter gap closer and a more powerful swing, while also consuming more PP. Charging it past that will bring it to its final form, which will also be indicated as a big ball around your wand. This takes 4 whole seconds to charge, but it does a ton of damage. As alluded to earlier, and right in the name itself, Techers can use techniques. Though when it comes to using them for damage on Techter, they are still used, but not as much as a Force would, due to their melee swings being a very strong form of consistent DPS. Now with support techs, that's where Techter really comes into play, as it's most known for its longer and stronger versions of buffs. However, to give you a baseline, normally an uncharged shifter or D-band will only have 2 ticks or pulses, and a charged one will have 4. Each of these ticks gives 15 seconds of their respective buff, charged or not. Also, the maximum duration of these buffs caps out at 1 minute. But with Techter skills, a lot of this changes. Long Arm Assist extends the duration of Shifter and D-band from 15 to 45 seconds per tick, and Extend Assist then raises the cap of Shifter and D-band from 1 minute to 3 minutes. Between these two skills, Techers can give a whole 3 minutes worth of buffs and only 1 charged support tech. But that's not all when it comes to these 2 buffs. Techter also has access to Advanced Shifter and Advanced D-band, which are 25% more effective than their base versions. And to top all that off, there are 4 more skills in its tree that give passive bonuses for simply being under the effects of Shifter and D-band. There's an advanced version of Resta too. However, it's usually pretty optional as it's only 20% better, and once we get crafted techs, crafted Resta will be even better. Speaking of healing, this leads me into the next skill, Super Treatment, as you'll be using this to heal others and yourself a bit outside of Resta, as this recovers 25% HP and extra PP every second for 30 seconds when you gear a status ailment with Anti. Techter has 2 more skills to bring all the support techs mentioned so far back together. Territory Burst extends the radius of all territory techs, which includes Resta, Anti, Shifter, D-band, Megaverse, Zondil, and Zanverse. And then there's Support Range Extender, which further increases the range of Resta, Anti, Shifter, and D-band. Before moving on from techs, there's one more category I'd like to cover, and that's Compound Techniques. These are not yet in the North American beta, so the name may change, but they will become a part of it soon enough. These are very strong techs that combine 2 elements and are only accessible to the Force and Techter classes. What separates them from other techs right away is that they can only be used from the sub-palette and have to be charged up to use, which is as easy as landing enough damage on enemies with techs. And interestingly enough, they each have their own cooldown too. When released, you'll be able to get these from client orders and possibly from an exchange shop if NA is anything like JP. And then there's also something called mini compound techniques, which are kind of like weaker versions of their respective compound techs, but do not require you to charge them up. Instead, they just cost a lot of PP, and because of that, they aren't always worth using, but they're still nice to have. Unlike normal compound techniques, these can also be put on the weapon palette instead of just solely on the sub-palette hotbar. In general, the idea is to use normal compounds here and there when you can, as they have long cooldowns but are very strong. And then use mini compounds to supplement damage and for other reasons. For example, the Ice and Light mini is great for sustained range DPS while also being mobile. The Wind and Lightning mini is great for instant grouping of enemies. And the mini Fire and Dark combo can be used for a quick disengage. Once we have access to compound and mini compounds, you will have much less room on your sub palette hotbars and weapon palettes to play around with, since with Techter, there are already a bunch of things you will need to have ready to use at a moment's notice. To make the most out of the room you have, I suggest not having any mate or atomizer items on your main bar, besides moons to res, unless you're in a 12 sub. Next would be to place wand levers and wand reactor on another sub palette, and swap to that palette at the start of every mission to toggle them on. Then swap back to your main one for the rest of the duration of the quest. After that, you should have enough room for the essentials. If you focus more on melee, this will be less of an issue for you in general. There are many great left rings for Techter out there, but you can only use one for right now. Eventually, you will be able to use more rings at once by copying their effects into units at the NPC's doo-doo and a Monica in the shop area. Until then, I suggest looking into one of these, or even a few of them, to have one to swap to in different situations. Our first one will be another wand element change, and this makes it so your wand changes its element depending on which technique you last charged, but does not change when using any support tech including Zondil and Zanverse. This works really well with Techter because of the damage bonus gained when using the correct weapon element with elemental weak hit in the skill tree. Though, do not get this one mixed up with the normal wand element change ring, because the normal one still changes your element when using Megaverse, Zanverse, and Zondil, so it's not desired. Technique Charge Parry allows you to block while charging techs for up to 6/10 of a second at max. It might not sound like much, but it's actually very helpful, especially when using Phantom as a sub with shorter charge times. Leaping Dodge is a ring that allows you to jump even higher than a double jump. As good as it is, I would not suggest using this until you are more familiar with the class and focus more on casting too. Mate and Atomizer levers are a very nice quality of life ring to have, and can be very helpful for supporting the group and keeping yourself alive. And this becomes even more necessary if you decide to use a 12 as a sub to Techter when it releases. For right rings, this is where you just fill in the gaps depending on which subclass you choose. If you don't use Hunter as a sub, then the Hunter Physique ring can be very helpful, as it's an active buff that reduces damage taken and stops knockups for its duration. Enhanced Attack follows Techter pretty well, as it increases your normal attack damage by 8%. However, this does not apply to the explosions you cause with the Wand Focus's Photon Furies. Even so, it's still a pretty nice boost if you focus more on wand smacking. There are a bunch other out there to choose from. These are just some that stand out to me. Take a look around and pick something that you think will suit your playstyle the best. Your playstyle, mag choice augments, and skill tree setups are going to vary depending on which subclass you want to use. Hunter as a subclass will grant you great survivability and lots of unconditional melee damage. That being said, you will never really be touching techniques outside of buffing or supporting. Due to not really using techs for damage in this combo, this is the only sub that will allow you to forego the need to take all the elemental masteries in the skill tree. Some would even say you don't really need to take any of them besides Dark, because the crafted version of Ramagid, which we don't even have yet, synergizes very well with this combo's melee nature. If you ever want to cast a bit as a Techter, you might want to pick a different sub. That being said, you would want to use a melee mag and melee augments with a Hunter sub. Fighter will be your choice if you'd like to play a good mix of melee and tech casting for damage. This is usually replaced with Phantom later on as a sub, but for now, a fighter sub will first and foremost give you extra damage through its two stances. You will also have access to Tech Art's Perfect Attack bonus and Combo Variant Perfect Attack PP save, which will together give a damage bonus and reduction in PP cost when consecutively perfect attacking with different PAs. Fighter's Chaser skills also fit in nicely, as Techers can apply stats ailments pretty easily compared to others. For now, choosing a fighter sub means you want to be casting a bit, so with that you should be using a Tech Mag and Tech Augments. Summoner is nice as it offers lots of stat ups, passive damage increases almost on par with some other classes' stances, passive healing, and an active debuff you can place on an enemy for additional damage. This however requires a lot more attention to detail and micromanaging, and is not for beginners. With this sub, you are also a hybrid similar to a fighter, but with more survivability. And as such, you should look into all three elemental masteries, use a Tech Mag, and slot tech for augments. Phantom, once released, will be an amazing sub to Techter, as it grants extremely high unconditional damage modifiers, a bit of crit rate, higher passive and active PP regen, and best of all, the ability to charge techs up to 50% faster, which will make weaving buffs, CCs, damaging techs, melee swings, and heavy hammer PAs all together much more easily. Then there's the Phantom Mag skill, you can use even as a sub, and with that allows you to get 200 melee and 200 tech power from a pure 200 dex mag. The only downside to a Phantom sub is that you don't have as much survivability as you would say with a Hunter sub. Since you will be casting a lot with this sub, like the previous two, grab the Elemental Masteries and slot tech in your gear later on. Wall, like Phantom, is a Scion class and is not yet available on NA, but when it is, it'll be a decent sub for Techter 2, as it has a lot of nice damage modifiers. However, the real reason behind using this class as a sub is to make use of one of their skills, which allows you to become super beefy in return for giving up the ability to do any meaningful healing to yourself outside of made items. Due to its special mag skill, you can use any pure non-dex mag, however it's still recommended to use tech augments. I know I covered a lot of it in this video, but if you want a more in-depth look at Techter's skill tree, check out the skill tree video I made to go along with this one. If you're all set but would like to see a few skill tree builds for reference, or want to read more up on Techter, check out the links in the description. Take care.